Hey there, welcome to the Empower Her Wealth Summit, where we are in a powerhouse series of astonishing women speakers that all have different things that they're offering. And I'm Joanna Wright, founder of Bottom Line Wealth, your host here, and I am just so excited at all the different aspects, levels, creativity, personalities, and all the different things that are coming to the table throughout this whole summit. So if you haven't seen any of the interviews, please make sure that you're going through and watching every single one of them, because each one of them has powerhouse nuggets. And today we have this special guest, Chloe Daniels, where she's going to blow the doors off of pretty much your retirement, your investing, your money. And that's what we're all about, is creating your own economic independence, the Empower Wealth Summit. That's why we're here. So welcome, Chloe, so much for popping on board here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we have so much that we like to cover in a very short amount of time. And what my audience is screaming for is, how do I not outlive my money?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, your audience is a lot of real estate investors or a lot of people who are also building businesses and investing in the stock market as well.
We're both. I have women that are still in W-2, women that are entrepreneurs and coaches. But ultimately, all of them are in like trying to invest in real estate, trying to create that retirement plan. And, actually, before we get into this, let's just why should anyone listen to you, Chloe?
Sure.
What empowered you to even get on this topic?
Yeah, so I spent most of my life as somebody who would identify as bad with money, where I, was constantly living paycheck to paycheck, despite, every year making more and more money. And I got to the point where I had spent so much time relying on other people, thinking that, okay, I'm not the person for this. Like, I can't do this. I can't learn how to manage money myself. And it got me in some really bad situations with romantic partners, and situations where I was in abusive partnerships where I couldn't leave because of money. And so I eventually got to a place where I was like, all right, Chloe, you're the common denominator here. And if there's other people in the world who are dumber than you who have figured this out before, like, that's my mantra, is dumber people than you have figured this out before. And I just was really tired of getting myself back into bad situations over and over again. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to figure this whole thing out. And so I started with this whole idea that I think a lot of us enter into the personal finance space with this idea that being debt free was the ultimate goal. But as I learned more and more, I realized debt freedom is just a very small portion of wealth building, and it's certainly not a requirement. And with my loans that were at 3.54%, it didn't make sense for me to pay them off early. So I had to continue to educate myself and realize, okay, really what makes the most sense for me is to be investing as much money as I possibly can right now, especially because when I started this journey, I was in my late 20s. So I made that switch. And in terms of why should people listen to me, from that moment where I was like, all right, dumber people than you have done this before, which happened in October 2018. Since then, I've increased my net worth by about $400,000 without owning real estate. So that's all stock market, and stock market and cash investments and things along those lines. But I also have helped thousands of people change their finances in those years. I became a certified financial education instructor, and then also a certified financial literacy professional. I've been featured in all of the places where they check the receipts as well. We've got our Business Insider features and our CNBC features and things like that. But one of my coolest new accolades is that I have been invited to the White House twice to attend some of their briefings on student loan forgiveness. And unfortunately, I've had to turn them down twice as well because I had other commitments. But that's always like a cool, I'm like, I hope they invite me again. Like the next time they invite me, I'll actually go. And I've been to some of their virtual events as well that they've invited me to. But, I think the coolest part is all the people that I've helped. I've got over 2,000 students inside of our lazy investing community. And the stories that I hear on a daily basis on how these women are changing their relationship with money, it's just a reminder of why I do the work that I do.
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah, like it sounds like a great roller coaster to be on. And I got to tell you, we have very similar stories, being
Mhm.
stuck in a relationship and it was financial, right? So I
Mhm.
lost everything in 2008 and had to, be stuck for the longest
Mhm.
time. And so I get it, is all I'm trying to say. And then also, I hear it from a lot of women too. So I hope this really resonated for the audience that it doesn't matter where you're at. What did you say? Dumber people have done it,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you can too, right?
Mhm.
And women are very intelligent, and we tend to hold back for fear of sounding like we're a bitch, we're a,
Mhm.
whatever, um, and a lot of. Do you think some of that was like what made you was being able to stand up and not care if someone called you something like that, or thought you were too much? What is that, Taylor Swift?
I mean,
Much, right? Like,
yeah, if you go to look at my Instagram page, I'm sure a lot of people think that I am too much. My whole platform was built off of me providing financial education in a way that probably no one has ever seen before. I'll dance in a really bad way because when I first started TikTok, I was looking at TikTok and I was like, everyone on here is dancing, but I can't dance. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to dance and have some fun with it. And while I'm dancing, I'm going to share some financial tips. And it just took off. But it's me, being a total goofball on the internet, which is absolutely too much for certain people. But I'm a feminist. I'm somebody who's going to stand by my values, and I'm not afraid to talk about those things. So as my internet presence has grown, I've had to just come to the realization that not everyone's going to like me, and that's a good thing. But it is a hard adjustment. I've been a people pleaser my whole life. And so always adjusting to like understanding that it's okay for people to not like you. And if people don't like you, that means you're standing by your values and you're standing by, what you believe in. So it's an adjustment, and there's still days when I get, some type of feedback or a comment or something that just like really ticks me off. But what I've worked on in the last couple of years is just protecting my peace and deciding when to engage and when not to engage. And 90% of the time, it's to not engage.
not engage. That is cool. And I'm saying that because women get hung up on what they look like, what they show up as, what they and the reason I'm bringing this to the table, because I've come across some women that are afraid to speak up,
Mm,
afraid to say how they feel and how they we don't talk about money, we don't.
mm.
That's too much. Like, that's private, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an adjustment learning that when we talk about money or when we talk about anything that's difficult, like it takes the pressure off of us.
Mm.
So many of us have fear and shame and a lot of judgment, self-judgment of ourselves, of feeling like, well, I should have done better. I should have known better. I should know more by now. And once we start talking about it, we realize everyone else feels the exact same way because most people, unless they had a formal education or they had like a formal education that happened to include personal finance, which only now this year has like California just approved financial literacy to be included in schools like
Oh,
this last week. And granted,
oh
we
my
don't know
God.
we don't know what the curriculum that they're gonna do, but it's 2024. So it's not like this hasn't been something that we're taught in school. It's not a part of our required education. So it makes sense that most of us, unless we just got really lucky and had parents who knew how to educate us about this thing, most of us have no education on this thing until we decide I've had enough, let me go learn. The good news is like now there's so much education out there. The bad news is there's so much education out there and it can get really overwhelming to figure out what the right thing is for you.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. I have a lot of women inside of my audience that just feel like that's been taboo. I know they want to break through it. They shoulda, coulda, woulda all over themselves quite a bit.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. We just weren't taught this in school. So don't shoulda, coulda, woulda nothing.
Mhm.
And then tell me a little bit about like how you transition from, not having the financial education to like, now I don't want to say an obsession, but you almost have to be when you're running a business. You
Yeah.
have to be obsessed about your work, right? So I am obsessed about real estate investing. What was that shift for you to go through in not knowing I kind of like it, and now I don't really give a crap what people care about me, and I'm gonna do my thing. Like, how was that transition? How can women learn from your transition, I guess is what I'm getting at, so that they can follow along?
So like in terms of personal finance specifically, like how to
Yeah.
become obsessed with it or how I became obsessed with it.
Well, how you did
Um,
it, be the story.
yeah, I mean, so for me, I had spent so much of my life feeling like I was trapped and feeling like, so when I graduated college, I had over $80,000 of student loan debt from an English degree and a Spanish degree. And I graduated in 2012, and the economy was still very much recovering from the Great Recession. My parents were still dealing with furloughs and layoffs and things like that. And so I first got out of college making $14 an hour despite having $80,000 of debt and 2 degrees. And everyone I knew at the time was going back to school to get a master's and to get further education because the job market was so bad. And so I had spent most of my 20s just feeling like I had no control over my own life, feeling like I'm stuck in this horrible. I remember when I was 22 years old going into a therapist's office and being like, I'm just having to come to terms with the fact that my life isn't going to be as awesome as I thought it was going to be because I've got $80,000 of student loan debt. I thought my life was over at 22, which is so funny now at 33. Just being like, oh my God, I wish I was 22 again, like doing all the things that I'm doing now. But it's one of those things where I thought my life was over because the student loan debt was so huge and the jobs weren't there. And so I had spent so much time believing that my life wasn't in control. And once it was 2018 and I had this moment of like, Chloe, dumber people than you have figured this out before. Like the thing here, the issue here is like, we need to figure out our money. We need to take control of this because money determines everything in life. It determines our safety. It determines our ability to stay at a job or leave a job. It determines our ability to leave an abusive relationship. And so I was just like, this is the ticket. This is the ticket to that freedom that I'm looking for because I had done the therapy, I had climbed the corporate ladder, I had done the travel, I had done everything, and I was still really unhappy. And it was like, it's because I felt like I didn't have options. It felt like I didn't have any freedom of choice because of how much I didn't understand money, how much I didn't have control over my time, and how much I, felt like I was always going to be trapped in low paying jobs because of the economy at the time. So I saw getting my money right as the ticket to the freedom and control that I wanted. And that's what made me obsessed is knowing that whatever it is I wanted to do, it was at the end of me figuring out this money thing or in the process of figuring out this money thing. So that's kind of what drove me. But I also got really, really clear on what my why was, like why I was doing this in the first place. And originally, when I started this journey, I thought, okay, I just want to be debt free. Like that's it. My original plan was I was so uneducated on wealth building that I was like, I'm not going to invest. That's for people who are way smarter than me. Like I would just lose my money. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to pay off all of my debt. And then I'm going to save up 10 grand and travel the world for a year. That was my plan. And I was going to be debt free by 33. That was my whole goal. And what's crazy is I'm 33 now, and I started this back in 2018 or late 2018. And I learned so much. If I had just been focusing on that debt freedom, I wouldn't have increased my net worth by $400,000. I wouldn't have started this whole business that's now a 7-figure business. I wouldn't have, done all the travel that I did. I would have still been working a corporate job, but it's like you change and evolve as you learn more. And as I learned more, it's like you can't see everything from where you're standing at the beginning. You just know like, all right, I'm going to take this next step. And as you learn more, the excitement grows and transforms because it's like, oh, now this is getting added to my dream. So you got to find the dream that gets you excited in the beginning and you got to stick to it. And then don't be afraid to let that dream evolve because you learn more, you have more information. And what my life is right now versus what I had planned for in 2018 is so much better. Like I have more than $10,000 saved, and I'm not debt free. I have like 7K left on my student loans that I'm just going to pay off slowly because it's 3.54% interest rate. But, I've got a multi 6-figure portfolio now. So it's one of those things where you learn more and the dream changes and your methods of doing it change. But at the center of everything has always been freedom of choice for me. Like, I don't want to be beholden to something just because I need a paycheck.
So good. So good. So good. I couldn't have even planned for you to say that so perfectly. What I'm hearing here is like this golden thread of life changes. So you
Yep.
have different dynamics that change. So the students that you bring on and train, where do you think that they first get that light in their eyes of, I have something, I could see the light now and I could take this to a different level? How can you explain that for us?
Yeah. For me, I think it's when you get this understanding of what retirement actually is. Like, so many of my students have never calculated how much money they need to save in order to be able to retire. And when I say save, I mean invested. And I think once I teach people how to calculate that number and run the numbers with the compound interest calculator, that's one big part of it, is like looking at like, oh, this is a number. And once it's not an age. So many people think retirement is an age. And it's like, no. Retirement is a number. Once you reach this number, that's when you can stop working. And so once people realize that, for some people, that's a huge switch. Like, oh, I didn't realize that. And then it's like, it becomes this game of like, well, how quickly can I reach that number so I can retire as soon as possible? So I think that's a big one. For me, that kept me motivated a lot, was running those numbers over and over again for the first couple of years. Or for some people, it might be their debt freedom date, where they like put it into the debt reduction calculator and they're like, oh, wow, I'll be debt free in 3 years if I stick to this plan or whatever it is. That, and then I think really getting connected to their why. I know that sounds like a broken record talking about it again, but I think in hearing my story, where I did not have any financial education, I did not have any generational wealth. I had 70K of debt. I wasn't making crazy amounts of money, and was still able to make this huge impact. And like, once they hear that, of like, I'm like a regular person. I'm not some finance bro. I'm not
What? You're
some,
not some Wonder Woman
I
superwoman?
know,
What?
I'm just a regular person. And I think I think a lot of people, when I share my story, at least for the students who join my community, they're like, okay, she's in a situation that I'm in right now, or she had been in a situation that I was in right now. And like, I see my story in her story. And so many of us women, it's like, it's hard now that it's been, 6 years since 2018. It's hard remembering where I was sometimes, because it's like there's so much distance. But when I go back to that, like, I didn't know anything. I truly believe that I was incapable. I truly believe that being good with money was something you were either born with or not born with. And so when I share that and really try to emphasize, like, I am where, or I have been where you are at, I think it helps people realize, like, okay, her story is so similar to mine. Maybe I can actually do this too. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we need to hear our story in someone else. And that's why somebody would choose to work with someone that they like. There's so many financial literacy experts out there. There's so many educators out there. The only reason somebody's going to decide to work with me versus someone else is because they're like, oh, her story resonates with me, and her approach and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's like, you've got to find somebody whose story really resonates with you, that you see yourself in their story and what they've done and what they've been able to accomplish in the time frame that they've been able to accomplish it in.
Yeah, so good. Ed Milet, I believe, is who I heard this from. If you want to get to a certain place, follow somebody who's already there, who's already done it. It will get you there quicker. Now, how I take my students so that they understand, not even just by a story, but taking all that information, and I'm sure you do the same thing. I call it Google tubing, like the world wide web of info is so intimidating. Like, who do you believe?
Oh yeah.
How do you know? What do you? narrow it down, right, by some of the things that you just said, and following somebody that you resonate with, who's done what she's done, and you could see that little spark, right, that we were talking about, like that spark that you're like, I see the light, like there's possibility, and now I just need Chloe to give me a plan,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
So
There's
good.
so much out there, and like, really finding what feels right and trusting your gut on things, I think is really important.
So good. Yes. So tell me about maybe a challenge that, so when you first start in business, you don't know what your clients need until you've gone through some rocky roads, right? What are some of the challenges that your clients have faced that you've been able to help them get past to that next level?
Yeah, I think a common one is the shame of feeling like they started too late and they should have
Mm.
started 10 years ago. I get a lot of people who are in their even their 40s or 50s, and a lot of the time it's like just providing that compassion of, hey, you did the best you could with the information that you had at the time. And so you're doing something now, and no matter what, you starting now, whether you're in your 40s, whether you're in your 50s, that's going to be so much better than you never starting. So many people get to their 40s, they get to their 50s and like, is it even worth it for me? Should I even do anything? And it's like, well, is it worth it for you to have more money in the future? Like, it's always going to be worth it to have more money in the future, even that's only $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000. Sure, it may not be enough for you to retire off of, but isn't it going to be better to have $100,000 in the bank in the brokerage instead of having $0? So I think really, really emphasizing that, like, most of us don't start until our 30s. A lot of us don't start until our 40s. And like, that's still enough time to catch up if you're smart about it, if you're strategic about it. In terms of other challenges, it's kind of, there's a lot. Let me think of what like one of the main ones is. I think the similar thing of like switching from the debt freedom mindset into the wealth building mindset, and then just fear of investing. But for me and what I've seen in my students, the fear of investing in the stock market goes away slowly as you start learning about the stock market. Once you start really understanding how it works and understanding that there are ways for you to invest that do not require all of this risky strategies that you think investing is. Half of my work is like breaking down preconceived notions about what investing in the stock market is. Because like
Mm.
everybody, when people think of investing in the stock market, the number one thing that I hear is Wolf of Wall Street. And it's like, okay, that is not what we're doing at all. And most people, but that's what people think that it is. They're like, they have no other frame of reference for what investing in the stock market is other than the Wall Street bros screaming at each other and like, this crazy intense thing. So they think that that's what investing in is like, okay, let me tell you, we are not doing anything even remotely like that. That's not what we're doing. And so a lot of it is breaking down those preconceived notions about what investing is. And once the women in my community, and I have some men in my community as well, but it's vast majority is women, we start with that education bit, and then after they go through the education, it's like, all right, how are we feeling? Are we ready to do this? And so it's like really talking them through the fears that they still have. A lot of us, we will still have fear until we do it, until we're like, all right, I'm sure it's the same in the real estate market where you're like, I am still terrified, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy my first property. I'm going to buy my building. I'm going to do this, whatever it is. You're going to be afraid until you actually do it. And the fear's not going to disappear. Like, you're probably always going to feel a little bit of that fear until you've just become so experienced in it. And so what I tell people is a lot of people, have spent years hoarding money. And so they're like, I have $10,000. Should I just put it all in the stock market? And I'm like, are you going to feel okay? Like, if all of a sudden the stock market goes down 20% tomorrow? And some of them will say, yes, I'm educated. I know after going through this course, like, I understand. I'm like, all right, if you're confident that once the stock market goes down, you're not going to panic and pull out, then like, go ahead. But most of us are better off like splitting that up into smaller payments to just deal with the fear. So that's, I think, two of the biggest things is like both breaking down those misconceptions about what investing is, discussing and showing compassion for people who are feeling like they're starting too late, and then just like really working through the fear of like, all right, you have the information, now it's time to fly, little bird. How do we do this in a way that is not so scary, but you act anyway? Like, you may still have that fear, but you're going to have to do it anyway.
Go a little messy is what I say. It's okay to be messy.
Yeah, it's okay. And here's the thing, when we're dealing with things like index funds where you're buying the entire US stock market or 500 of the largest stocks in the US, it's not like you're not going to mess it up so bad that you lose all of your money. So that's what I always tell people too. It's like, even if you mess something up, it's not going to be like my investment went down to zero. Like if you were day trading crypto or something, it's it's solvable problem. So yeah, really helping people get over the fear, I think is probably one of the biggest challenges that or biggest obstacles that we deal with in the lazy community.
I think that's like around the board and any investment vehicle. I hear that a lot anyways, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you shared that. And also, you did hit on a couple of things that I want to bring to the table of like just getting started, just once they understand, it erases a lot of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and it erases a lot of the fear, it erases a lot of the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Because you're educated now. Education is key, but now it's like an action thing. So the action brings clarity for you. What action step could you give somebody today to just kind of feel comfortable enough to like be in your world?
Something? Sure. So I always like to, one of my favorite things in conversations like this, where like I only have a limited period of time with you, and somebody's like, all right, Chloe, I'm ready to start investing in the stock market. There are two ways to invest in the stock market without having any knowledge of how to invest in the stock market. Now, I'll discuss those two ways, but this is an asterisk of this is how investing works. I always like to describe it like those nesting dolls, the Russian nesting dolls, where you've got like the big nesting doll, which is your brokerage account. Okay. So you've got your Charles Schwab, your Fidelity, your Vanguard. Most of us have heard of those. A Robinhood, if somebody is using Robinhood. I don't particularly like Robinhood, but it is a brokerage. Now, inside of that big nesting doll, there's a smaller nesting doll. That's your account type. So many people think your Roth IRA, your 401k, your RRSP if you're in Canada, so many people think that is an investment. That is not an investment. That is just an account type that saves you money on taxes that lives inside of your brokerage. So inside of your brokerage, you can have multiple different account types, but your Roth IRA is not an investment. There's so many people who put money diligently into their Roth IRA and they think that they're invested. You are not invested unless you buy investments. That's the third doll. So that doll lives inside of that account type. So if you've got the Roth IRA, you put money in, you got to still buy investments. In terms of what type of investments that you can buy, even if you know literally nothing about investing in the stock markets, there are two options. You can do a robo-advisor or a target date fund. So a robo-advisor is, most of us have heard of financial advisors. So we know what a financial advisor is. It's somebody who we pay to manage our investments for us. They go and they buy investments and we don't have to think about it. We just pay them to do it for us. A robo-advisor does the same thing. The only difference is you're no longer working with a human. You are working with an algorithm. So what you do is you input a bunch of information about yourself, your retirement goals, your investing goals, whatever. And then the robo-advisor, the algorithm is going to say, hey, based off of the information that you've given us, here's a recommended portfolio that you could invest in. Do you want to do that? If so, we can set you up on an automated investment and you're paying a fraction of the fees. Some of them are even free. And we love that because a 1% fee, a 1.35% fee, which is around what you're paying for a financial advisor who charges an asset management fee, that actually can have a huge impact on your portfolio long-term, like up to 20% sometimes, depending on how long you're investing with that financial advisor, because the fees compound just like our investments compound. With a robo-advisor, you're either doing it for free or you're paying like 0.25%. So it's a big difference and it's something that you can get set up with right away. Almost all of them invest in index funds, which is what I teach, which is like a double win as well. So there's robo-advisors out there. There's like Betterment, M1 Finance, Wealthfront, things along those lines. There's a lot of them out there. Now, on the flip side, kind of before robo-advisors, the solution was something called a target date fund. So if you have a 401k or a 403b or 457, likely you already have target date funds, but a target date fund is essentially a pre-made portfolio that is supposed to be super easy for anyone to pick and then just hands off invest. Essentially what you do is you pick a target date fund that has the date that you want to retire. Now, I say date, but it's the closest year to when you want to retire. So you could pick the Vanguard 2060 retirement fund or Vanguard 2055 retirement fund. They go usually in 5-year increments. And what that does is you're purchasing an entire portfolio. So you're not purchasing just 1 or 2 individual stocks. You're purchasing something that's going to contain thousands of different investments inside of it. So it's going to have some US stocks, it's going to have some international stocks, it's going to have some bonds, and that's going to automatically reallocate for you the closer you get to retirement. So let's say you picked a 2060 fund. Right now, it's going to be 90% stocks, 10% bonds. But in 10 years, it might be 80% stocks and 20% bonds. And then in another 10 years, it might be 75% stocks and 25% bonds, and you didn't have to do anything. It's going to do that automatically. So those are some options to get people started right away. Now, that's with a huge asterisk that I really, really encourage people to continue their education on the stock market and investing, because not all robo-advisors are created equal. Not all target date funds are created equal. Your target date fund may be too conservative for you. You may be paying too high of fees. You may look at it and be like, I could do this myself, once you educate yourself on how to invest in the stock market. But these are both 2 things that get you started right away. And that's I'm a big believer in. Like, let's get you started. And then let's continue your education on how the stock market works, because your needs are going to change. You're going to want to make sure that you can have the conversations that you need to have. And you also want to make sure that you're picking something that's right for you, because even with the robo-advisor, just like in dealing with a financial advisor, if you're telling it something like, let's say you're in your 20s or your early 30s, and it's asking you like, how do you feel about investing in the stock market? And you're like, I am terrified. They're going to put you in a conservative portfolio. Even a human financial advisor will do that because they're liable. So it's like, you have to understand that without the knowledge you need to invest in the stock market, you're not necessarily going to know if you're invested correctly, even in using a financial advisor, a robo advisor, or a target date fund. So that's why I'm a huge believer in getting your education as well. And like, I'm not talking about a college degree. I'm talking about like 10 hours of studying the stock market maximum. Our whole course is 7 hours. And it's like, people go from, I don't know anything about investing to the stock market, to I am an investor in those 7 hours. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Oh my God, that was tremendous.
Thank you. I like to give people things that they can do like right now, even with no knowledge.
Yeah. So what I took from that is, I like the nesting dolls. That really helps explain, the different levels. If this, then that, but this goes into this, and that,
Yeah.
so I'm sure my audience is going to stop and replay this a couple of times so they can follow the nesting dolls. But what I also got from this is it's good to like jump in and get educated. And some of us like stop because we don't know that if we're learning anything right or wrong yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing I heard from is the action taking, right? Mm-hmm. So when you take action on these small things, now you have the education of I like or don't like, and here's how I can move forward. Yeah. So that's my take from it. So did I get everything on point?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like at the end of the day, what I always say is nobody's going to care about our financial futures as much as we care about our financial futures. Mm-hmm. And that means we have to educate ourselves, because if we're going to be the drivers, which we should all be the drivers of our own financial seat or our own financial car, however you want to use this metaphor, we have to have the education to be the best advocate for ourselves. And here's the thing, good investing is simple. It is not complicated. You are not having to deal with these day trading strategies. You're not having to pick the hottest stocks. It is simple, it is easy, and it's way easier than you think, but it does require a little bit of education to really learn the language. I mean, at the end of the day, it's less about the numbers and way more about learning a new language.
I love it. I love it. So I'm so glad you're here and shared all that with us. And those of you that are like, well, Joanna, aren't you into real estate investing? Why do you have this stock person on here? I just want to be clear that it's this and that.
Yes. Right? Yes, absolutely.
It's this and that. it's not one or the other. Where you get your investing, there's so many things that you can invest in. What I'm going to advise you guys on is to get educated, just like Chloe is stating, and build your financial fortress. Like, to me, this is how I see it, is real estate, because it's tangible, is like a brick, right? And you can add a couple of bricks to build your fortress. And then the mortar in between is all the other different investments, like the stock market and whatever. I mean, would you put that as an accurate statement in your world?
It just depends on your priorities, because there are pros and cons to each different type of investing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a heavily biased towards the stock market just because real estate has its own pros and cons as well. And some people are going to be better suited to investing into the stock market or investing in real estate, or a combination of both. So it really just depends on what your priorities are, and like also what your lifestyle requirements are and how you want to be, you know, well-rounded in that way. But I definitely think that all real estate investors should have some stock market investments. And I think especially for a real estate investor, that makes perfect sense, where it's like a brick, you know, I would say that it's also bricks. I'm like, you know, I think the stock market is also a brick, because I think there's a big misconception that in order to build wealth, you have to have real estate. Like, that's the only way. And so I am out here being like, hey, it's okay if you're building your wealth through something else, just because right now it's so difficult for people to get into buying their first home. Now, granted, that's buying your first home versus buying real estate. I know they're two different, like buying real estate as an investment, those are two different beasts, and everybody's got different priorities. So, yeah, I view it as another brick, the mortar to put it together, you know, I don't know, maybe cash.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because it helps, you know, not just my point of view, but, you know, other people might see it in a different way as well. So hearing that is awesome. So being educated, since we've been so harping on, you know, regardless of what you choose, we don't even care what you choose, but choose something, right? Choose something and get educated. So how can they get educated with you, Chloe?
Yeah, so we have tons of free resources. We have free and paid resources, obviously, but on our number one go-to is our free guide. We have a 40+ page guide that contains templates and videos and links to a ton of different things, and also just education in the book itself. That's available at moneyrightguide.com. And then we also have a free investing class every month. You can come to that. It's lazyinvestingclass.com.
Love it. Love it. And all these links will be in the show notes as well, so you guys can have access and click on that. No worries. But anything that you think anyone should know before you leave here today that we did not discuss already?
I think my biggest thing is that this is not above you. Like, it is, and it's not as complicated as you think it is. I'm sure most of you, before you started investing in real estate, probably thought real estate investing was incredibly complicated and incredibly maybe above you. And you're like, I don't know if I can do this. Honestly, investing in stock market is probably even less complicated than real estate investing.
Probably.
Like, honestly, and it requires less capital up front, and it's genuinely a very easy thing for us to do. We just believe, because of what we've been shown, that it's really complicated and really risky, and I promise you it is not. So it's an amazing thing to add to your real estate investments, because then you've got more options, and you've got something with a little bit more liquidity as well as you move into the later years of life, which, if you're worried about your money running out, this is another option. It's another bucket for you to also withdraw from. So yeah, I just want to drive home the point that this is not above you. It's not too late to start. It's not something that, you know, is it worth it for me? Well, do you have 10 years? Is it something that, you know, having more money in 10 years would be worth it to you? You know, if the answer is no, then all right. But I think for most of us, the answer is like, yeah, I would want more money in 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one important question I want to make sure that we ask here today is, what does Chloe like to do for fun?
Oh gosh, so I actually do jujitsu. Yeah, I like getting choked in by strangers on the mats in basements for fun. Yeah, it's a sport that I started doing last year, and I absolutely love it. It's not something I ever, I was 32 when I started it. And I remember Googling, is 32 too late to start doing jujitsu? But apparently San Diego has a huge jujitsu community that I had no idea. And I started it just thinking that I was going to go, twice a week. And I loved it. I ended up competing in it last year. And I lost, but I had a great time. So
That's
it's,
awesome.
yeah, it's a weird little thing, but it's like the first time in my life where I found a physical activity other than like hiking. I love hiking too.
Mhm.
But it's like the first time I found a physical activity that I really, really love to do.
That's super cool. I love it. I
Thank
think
you.
that's got to be the first that I've heard.
Yeah, it's a unique one for sure.
Yeah, yeah, super. Okay, well, anything else that anyone should know before we cut you loose today?
I don't think, I mean, that's a lot of stuff. Just remember that if you have a Roth IRA and you think that that is invested, just double check, because if you didn't pick investments, it is not investment. And the last thing I want you to do is to be diligently putting money away every single month for it to not grow. So if you do one thing after listening to today's podcast or show or whatever we're calling this, check to see if you are actually invested. If you see cash or settlement fund or a settlement account, you're not actually invested and you need to buy investments.
Yeah, so good. So good. Awesome. Well, thank you, Chloe, so much. I've so enjoyed your spirit, your energy, and your education and investing and showing women that, hey, it's never too late. Don't shoulda, coulda, woulda all over yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
dive into Chloe's materials so that you can learn, get educated, and take a next step.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got this. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you on the next summit.